Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar, Open Door Leadership, How to Build Capacity and Lead Through Collaboration for Adult Learning Programs. Our webinar today is generously sponsored by Burlington English, and today we have the always exciting Robert Breitbart on the line with us, who's going to share a few words with us. Robert?
Thank you, my friend, and really appreciate all this going on. Almost a decade of great partnership with our friends at COAVE. So thanks for all the heavy lifting to put these together, and we're so glad to be able to sponsor them for you. Elizabeth is very humble, but you're in for quite a treat today, and I really love this topic. So there's just can't be enough leadership development and adult education. So you're in for a real valuable treat today. And as far as COAVE, thank you all, and thank you, Sharon, and everybody on the board for spotlighting on LinkedIn and so many other locations about the different things going on in Washington, D.C., about tinkering with the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act. So please pay attention to that. Because there's a lot being discussed that's super valuable for you to know for what the next few years look like for us. And if you've been following a lot of that, you know that one of the big things that's happening is they're really trying to put the W in WIOA, so workforce. And so how do we help our adult education programs be more future focused for our students as far as their steps after, let's say, adult ESL. So let's get them future focused as early as possible. So even in beginning levels of adult ESL with Burlington English, you can start introducing, again, their next steps. So whether that's IELCE, IET, job training in general, but the bottom line is it helps get that conversation started, and therefore building more value into your program. So retention goes up, student performance goes up because they're so much more plugged in with all the value you can bring to them. As someone who started their teaching career about 30 something years ago, I would say, let's make teachers' jobs easy. And so I might have been a pretty good conversational English teacher, but was I a trained career counselor? No, so I needed all the help I can get. So with Burlington English, you get it all in one spot. So you can, again, teach effectively. And like I say, without going to this resource and that resource, with Burlington English, we put it all in one location for your teachers, including, topics and things that might not come up, again, in a general conversational class, such as career laddering and career pathways. And again, helping them understand that your program can do more than just adult ESL, but adult basic ed and HSE and beyond. And then you work so hard to put these career training programs together. Let's make sure that students in our adult ESL classes have explored and they know all the reasons that they would want to go into a particular career path. And so as you can see, we introduced that. And by the way, every time they see something they like, they click Save to Portfolio, goes into their own personal digital career pathway portfolio. And lastly, we know if we write things down, we have a much better chance of actually fulfilling them. So as you can see on the screen, every one of your students can create a digital career pathway portfolio. And once again, if I'm a teacher just taking my first steps in adult education, I might not know all the opportunities that a program can provide for them. So we put it all in one place. And again, they really create value. They put it all in one location of all of their work. So thank you for all that you do. And please reach out to us at Burlington English, burlingtonenglish.com/contact. We'd love to hear from you. And now I'd love to hear from Elizabeth, so I'll turn it back over to James. Thank you, friends.
Thank you, Robert, and thank you, Burlington, for sponsoring today's webinar. We really appreciate your friendship and partnership over these many years. So thank you, Robert. All right, so our presenter today is Elizabeth Harner. She is the Director of Adult Learning and Professional Development at Southwest Metro. I see a lot of people are already putting in the chat box where they're calling in from today. If you haven't done so, feel free to do that. If you have questions during her presentation, feel free to put those in the Q&A section, and she will address those during her presentation or sometime afterwards. And with that, I'll hand it over to Elizabeth. Thank you.
Thank you, James, and thank you, Robert. I really appreciate it. And I'm very excited to be here today. I did not present this as a webinar the last time I presented it, so that's a little bit of a difference for me. But I'm very excited to be talking about this topic. I'm really, really passionate about adult education and about leadership in adult education. So I am going to, it's so great to see so many people from all over, by the way, especially places where it's snowing. I can sympathize. I'm in Minneapolis, so I understand. All right, I am just going to share my screen. And we can get started. So like James said, I am at Southwest Metro Intermediate School District in Minneapolis. I've been in this position for 6 years now. I don't have a background in adult education. I actually started out in the K through 5 sector. I was a special ed teacher, a reading resource teacher, and then I got my administration degree while I was living in Florida. So just a little bit about me. I am from Florida. I'm a Florida native, born and raised. But a few years ago, I got an amazing job opportunity to work in adult education, something I had never thought that I would be in. But I was lucky enough to become the director of the adult education program we have here at our district. And it's it's been an amazing, amazing journey. That is me. Since I'm a Florida native in the middle picture, I love the Bucks. And unfortunately, they did lose this past Sunday. And also, I love movies. Marcel the Shell with Shoes On, I would highly recommend. That's been a fantastic movie for myself and my kids. And I do have a teenage son and a teenage daughter and my husband. And that was our trip to Canada last year. So we're going to get started. We're actually going to be covering quite a few topics today. The first one is I really kind of want to hear from you guys. I know we're all logging in from all over the country, but I want to first start out with where we are in our educational journey, where we think we need to be and where we want to be going. So I'm going to take this off. And if you could use your cell phone for this, this would be the best way to do this poll. So this poll is a Mentimeter poll, if you're not familiar with it. If you pull up your browser on your cell phone and put in menti.com. And I really just want to hear from you guys. Where are you at in your educational journey right now? Are you new to being an administrator? Are you new to adult education like I was a few years ago? Are you optimistic about where we are going with our programming? Are you frustrated? Are you stressed? Just anything that comes to your mind as far as where you are in your journey. If you pull that up, the code is at the top, 7589-1294 is the code. For me, thank you, working on master's, new to adult ed. So we have something in common, yeah. Experienced, open. And I'll give this a minute so people have time to log in. So again, it's menti.com and the code is 7589-1294. Growing, retiring, working on AE, hopeful. Good trajectory. 22 years teaching, congratulations, that's great. New director. Okay. Always learning, great. Well, thank you for being here today. I agree with you, always learning is the best way to be. Okay. Working on my master's. So the way if you guys aren't familiar with surveys like this is a word cloud. So the more that people put in the same word, the more that that word grows or gets bigger. So I'm seeing a lot of people are experienced. So that's great. And it's awesome to be a lifelong learner. And even though you're experienced, you're here today and I'm sure you go to many other webinars and you learn from each other. So thank you for attending today. Okay, so while that keeps going, you can still put that in. I'm going to go back to my presentation and then start talking about leadership. So we talked about a little bit about where we are in leadership, and I don't need to go over some of the statistics from the last few years as far as education, particularly at the K through 12 level. But it is really important that the leadership in education be there for our teachers. We have teachers leaving, unfortunately, in droves. And I read something the other day about how this has been the hardest time in education these last 5 years with COVID and everything that's happened with schools shifting online and back in person. And we all know that it's been a really hard, stressful time for everyone. So as leaders, where do we need to be at? And then where do we need to grow to be there for our teachers? So once you think about where you are, I know you guys put your answers into that chat. What you need to think about is, are you where you want to be? And I always try to think about that whenever I even have to evaluate a teacher. I have to think about, where do I want to be as an administrator? And how am I building and framing my leadership to best support them? So I'm going to talk a little bit about framing leadership. And this is a really important aspect to thinking about where you are and being honest, and then being honest about where you need to be. So there's really 4 frames to our leadership. And just from looking at this, I'm going to go through each one a little bit. There's really frames that you want to be in, and then there's frames that you want to get out of. And it's hard because when you're an educator, you shift in and out of these depending on circumstances, depending on the teachers and the staff that you work with. But if we know that those frames can move, there's always hope and there's always optimism. So the first frame when you think about your leadership is, do you run a program that has low participation and low skill? In other words, and I know we all have had leaders like this, or had situations where we have seen a program where a leader is the leader and nobody else really has a say. That's really the autocracy type of leadership. The information really flows just from the administrator or the leader to their staff. This often leads to lack of buy-in from staff and lack of basically lack of programming goals being met. High participation and low skillfulness. If you are in this leader mindset, you might have those goals of being the leader that involves everyone, but maybe the organization isn't there. There's some unpredictable things that are preventing you from bringing your staff and your teachers into the situation so that they can help for the program needs and for everything to flow, so to speak. And we all know leaders that have been in those situations. Skillful leadership. So my last administration, there are times when there are a few teachers that are always tapped on the shoulder to say, hey, can you do this project, or can you participate in this? So the skillful leadership and the delegation is there, but you don't have everybody buying in. My program has about, right now we're at 17 teachers and I'm hiring 2 more. So if I only tap into my same 5 teachers, yes, they're participating and helping with the program needs, but then the other teachers are seeing that they're not being given those opportunities. So it's really a very haves and haves not kind of a situation. So the last one, this is where you really want to be. This is high participation, high skillfulness. When you think about your leadership, what are you doing to build that capacity? And that's really what I want to talk about more today is, are you making efforts to include all of your staff? Does that mean that your information is clear and consistent? And is it flowing both ways between you and the people that are working in your program? I know many of you have teachers at different sites. We have 4 sites currently for our program, and we're building into a 5th site. So sometimes it's hard to be a leader of a situation where you have teachers and staff kind of scattered all over geographically. But if you have a high leadership capacity and you're able to include all staff and the roles and responsibilities are shared, then you're not going to have as much of the barriers that you have, even if you're somewhere else geographically. So this is really the high skillfulness, high participation is really where you want to be. Is it always possible? No, some days are harder than others, as you know, but it's also where you want to strive towards. And so I really wanted to share these frames with you before we talk a little bit more about how to get there and the things that I've found to be probably the most successful for me and my program. Okay, so I had to throw in a little Ted Lasso there because I love this quote. There's 2 buttons I never like to hit, and that's snooze and panic. So there's no reason as a leader to ever feel panicked if you are honest with yourself and you know you're operating in a frame that you don't really want to be at. That doesn't mean that you can't move out of that frame. I know everybody works hard every day to try to make sure that they're there for their teachers and their staff. And there are just some more strategic things that I found that have helped to build a program and maintain it and stay in that high skill, high participation zone. And if you haven't seen Ted Lasso, you have to. It's great. Okay, so some of the things that I found to be the most effective when I say open door leadership is to really encapsulate these 4 things within your programming. A culture of feedback, which I will talk a little bit more about, building the relationships, not just between you and the teachers and staff that you have, but building the relationships that they can have with one another, making sure you're fostering those, encouraging leadership. And that's not just from a few teachers, but from all of them. All of your teachers and staff have talents that you can tap into. And then the collaboration piece. So I'm going to talk a little bit about all of those. So the most important thing when I moved to Minnesota from Florida, opposite than of what most people do. The most important thing for me being new to adult education and new to the area is building the relationships. It's obviously never good for a leader or an administrator to come in and start making calls. It doesn't really work. People who have been in this programming, most programming, don't really appreciate that. They would like to have more say and buy-in to particularly the teachers who have been there for quite some time. So building those relationships and that trust is really the first step. And we all know that, I'm sure, but some of those things that I've done, we have lunch and learns. That's something that has been effective in bridging that geographical gap that I was talking about. It might be as simple as like popping over to one of your sites with just a quick lunch and talk and not really make it about work, just checking in. Another thing that's been really effective is surveys. We survey students for their needs. What needs do they have for programming? What needs do they have for anything? Basically, every spring and every fall we do that. I also survey my staff. I survey them in an anonymous and open-ended way because just like anything, if you go to someone and say, hey, can you tell me what the problem is or what we need in this program or what your needs are, they might not always be totally honest. So sometimes it's good to make it just anonymous and open-ended. And that has given me a lot of insight. My teachers are very honest with me, but it's also nice for them to just have that platform so they can share out. I will talk a little bit more and show you a little bit more about cognitive coaching in a minute. Coaching is really, really different. It's not evaluative and it's not the leader making the call. Cognitive coaching, if you've never heard of it, that was developed by Art Costa and Robert Garmston many years ago. And I've been fortunate enough to meet them and be coached in this. It's a very effective way as a leader to encourage a staff person or a teacher to come to decisions on their own and to help them have buy-in in their own decision making. I find it most effective for helping a teacher when they're having a problem. Often as leaders, I think we feel like we have to know the answer and give a yes or a no call, when really it's probably most effective to give that ownership back to your staff person or your teacher. It really prevents that circle of people coming to you and asking you for the decision rather than giving them the ownership to make it. And I will give you a little bit more of an example of what that looks like. The last one is listening sessions. These aren't meetings. I know we all have program meetings or staff meetings. These are listening sessions. So basically it's my time to listen and to say to the teachers, what do we need? What's going right in this class? What's not going right in this class? Is our scheduling off? Is it on? That's my time to hear from the teachers. And really it's just for me to learn what I need to do as a leader to make a change if I need to. I wanted to share a picture, and I'll talk more about this teacher. She's one of my very passionate teachers about adult education. They all are, but she has a passion for community collaboration. And every year we have a 5K event, which is all of our adult educators and all of our students and their families come together and do a 5K. And then we have an international lunch and we get to know one another outside the classroom setting. So with her collaboration with the community, she's able to make this a really successful program. But I wanted to share our pictures from last year because it's one of the highlights of our year. And you can tell that the cake and the cookies are popular. So collaboration. I showed you those pictures because that teacher, while she collaborates with the community, she also collaborates within our programming. All of the teachers help, but she's really the leader and it's not on me. I don't plan it. I help her. I give her the help that she needs as the administrator, but it's really great to see her take that initiative on and kind of run with it. So as I'm talking about that 5K, I sort of want to highlight what we call the 3 Ps. And this is something that I really spoke to me when I read this last year, but it's really understanding when you have teachers, what is their purpose, understanding their purpose. Why are they an adult educator? If you kind of can tap into that, then you're pretty good to go because I've got adult educators. They have many different whys as to why they're teaching. And the why of it helps you as a leader to help guide them. Their priorities. What are the things that they prioritize in their classroom? A level 1 English teacher is going to be much different in their priorities than a GED teacher or a HiSET teacher. And then the patterns that that teacher really they bring to the table. I have many different ages of teachers. Some have been doing it for 20 years. Some have been doing it for 2. So the patterns that they build up really help as a leader for me to help guide them and help them. So I really like this picture too. I have it up in my office, but basically what Jen Shanky says is just like a tree needs roots, a strong center and leaves that reach higher with time. A teacher needs purpose, priorities, and patterns to thrive throughout the many years of their journey. And these can shift. Teachers' priorities change throughout their life. Their patterns might be different. And then their purpose is really just the root of it. And if you really understand that about your teachers, you'll be a much more effective leader and knowing who they are. And that's just another picture that I want to highlight. The purpose of community, that's from our 5K from a few years ago. That's one of our programming goals is we have the purpose of community. We prioritize learning. We have our learning classroom where we get book donations. We have books from grants, and we do that every week so we can check out books to the students and their families. And then our patterns that are really visible in the classroom. I think that's our level 3 class in the patterns. So I really like this quote. When you're surrounded by people who share a passionate commitment around a common purpose, anything is possible. And I think that's really true, especially when you have something as unique as adult education. I think to be an adult educator and to be a leader in that, you really have to be passionate and committed to it. So something that when I keep the 3 Ps in mind, a good example of this is recently we revamped our programming scheduling. Some of that came from some student input, and some of that came from a teacher really noticing that we need to serve the needs of students at not just the morning and the evening time, but the afternoon. So we were able to shift as a team. And we always start with the priority being our students being able to learn and have access to our services. And we always start with a consultation aspect of it. And a lot of times that's teachers consulting with one another, knowing what their students need. And maybe they'll come to me and give me some guidance as far as what I can do to help as an administrator. After that, the action isn't always led by me. It shouldn't be led just by the administrator. Action can also really be your teacher leader, your teacher teams, and what do they need to do. And they were the ones that really helped to set the schedule and to make sure that the programming needs were met, and reviewing it with the students, making sure it would be successful. And so far, adding in afternoon programming at different levels has been really effective. And that's really that teacher piece, coming and prioritizing the students. And always, whenever you have to set a new action into play, you have to have a review period. It's super important. It's not great to keep steering the ship in the wrong direction. We all know that, but it's super hard sometimes when you're leading a program to stop and say, is this really working? And taking that into account when you need to, move it somewhere else. So another thing that I'm really passionate about, I'm sure many of you have heard of her, is Carol Dweck's growth mindset. And that's the belief that no matter, what age you are, you're always able to expand your mind and do things that you kind of might not have previously thought was possible if you had a fixed mindset. Maybe you don't think you can learn an instrument. My mom is 77 and she just started learning the cello a few years ago, and she's gotten very good, but she has a growth mindset. What can we learn and what can we continue to learn? And I'm sure that's why all of you are here today, is because you have a growth mindset. The collaborative mindset is really similar to that. And it's understanding that with the priorities, the patterns, and the practice that we have, we can really make those interactions with our teachers really meaningful for them. And it's not just a leader coming in dictating or telling, it's having ongoing discussions, having check-ins with them, making sure that you're in the classrooms and helping and asking questions, and having informal classroom visits. I remember when I first became a teacher, I think I might have seen, and this is not a dig on the principal, principals are busy, leaders are busy, administrators are very busy, but you can't just see your leaders in the classroom for an evaluative time. That's not going to build a collaborative mindset between the teacher and the administrator. That leader and the administrator needs to be in the classrooms often, and in a really, really informal way. One of my favorite things is just like popping into a classroom and getting to know the students, helping if there's an activity, whatever is needed. But it's super important that you put yourself out there so that the teachers and the staff know that they can collaborate with you and you're not just sitting behind the closed door and coming out for evaluations only. That's scary. Okay, culture of feedback. So feedback is exactly that. It's the feedback that you are giving your teachers. Ooh, I'm sorry, my nose is running, but it's also the feedback that your teachers need to be giving you. I think it's really an interesting thing. There's a Harvard business study that was conducted in the corporate world. Obviously, we're in the education world, but in the corporate world, they found that 21% of managers say they avoid tough feedback conversations and evaluative conversations, which is a lot. Like, 1 in 5 managers a lot of times won't provide feedback, or it has to be prompted. And even then, maybe a person isn't comfortable giving it. I think if you create that culture of feedback where it's not only a leader giving feedback, but a teacher giving that back to the leader, and everyone being comfortable and on the same page about that, then I think you'll really make some strides with your staff and teachers. So essentially, there are 3 feedback types that I try to operate within, and you probably operate within as well. The first one that needs to be the least done, like I was talking about, is evaluative. In other words, you shouldn't just be seeing your teachers in action once a year when you do their evaluation, or twice a year if they're a new teacher. That is the least probably effective type of feedback, because a lot of times it's a checking the boxes kind of thing. I'm not saying that evaluations aren't a good thing. We need those. But if that's the only type of feedback you're giving your teachers, then you're not really building your collaborative mindset with them. I know as a teacher, I wouldn't feel super comfortable having a leader telling me 1 time a year how things are going, or asking those questions. The second tier of that I'll talk more about is coaching. Sometimes newer teachers need more of this, but I've found I still have veteran teachers that come to me, quite often, and I'm still feeling comfortable enough to coach them. Hopefully they trust me enough to let me coach them. And that needs to be utilized when a teacher is going through a tough situation, or needs help solving a problem. The last one, and this is the one that I find to be like the most successful. When I first started, like I said, I had to build those relationships. So my appreciative feedback, when somebody would answer a question for me or help me out because I was new to adult education and I needed to know what I didn't know, I really appreciated that. And I continue to appreciate that for my teachers and the staff that I work with. That appreciation feedback also needs to come from the leaders to their staff. And this can be run the gamut as far as appreciation. It can be daily. You could do an email every morning congratulating a teacher on whatever. What I do is I do weekly newsletters, which are really great because the teachers will send me shout outs to one another. They will send me updates as far as student success stories, students that have just recently gotten their GED. And these are really great because, like I said, if you're geographically in different areas, you need to find something that brings everyone together. And I find that newsletters are super helpful in making sure that everybody's on the same page, and really in an appreciative way, celebrating your programming and your successes. There is a lot that goes into appreciation. I'm not gonna lie, and it shouldn't just be Teacher Appreciation Week in the spring. We did one in the fall because our programming recently went up. As far as state evaluation, we were second in the state for measurable skill gains and for retention, and that was just a huge thing for our program. So we did an ABE Teacher Appreciation Week, and we just did all sorts of like prizes and giveaways and fun stuff like that. And I think that when a teacher and a team knows that they're appreciated and you go out of your way as a leader, that really makes a difference. Because when you do have to sometimes have those tough conversations, if they feel like they're being appreciated 99.9% of the time, that 1.1% when you have to have that tough conversation makes it much easier. So another thing that I really want to highlight with feedback wins is whenever I'm providing feedback to a teacher, and hopefully when they're providing feedback to me, I'm always assuming positive intent when I go in. And what that means is that there might be something that you need to talk to a staff person or teacher about. But if you're going in assuming that there was not good intent coming from that teacher, you pretty much already lost the conversation for yourself and for that teacher, and in having a successful collaborative discussion. I know it's hard sometimes to get out of that mindset, but that positive intent is so important, because that shows that you are on the same page as far as the goals for your program or for your students. But and people make mistakes, but as long as we have positive intent, I think we can have those tough conversations. Another thing is be vulnerable, share what your own personal journey in education has been like. I had to be vulnerable moving up here and not knowing adult education very well, but if I was able to share my personal journey and ask for some feedback from the teachers, the good thing is that they were honest with me. So, and it helps to really be honest and share those personal stories so that they know that you're working to improve and do the best for your program, and that you're all in it together. Okay, so one of the things I want to talk about coaching is when you are coming together with a teacher and you're trying to come up with a solution or try to build the capacity of your program with a whole new initiative. Like I was mentioning, coaching is not you making the call. It is not you making the final decision. Some things, yes, you have to make final decisions on budget. There's some things that are very strict. But a lot of things, really, your teachers or your staff can make the call by helping them with mediative questioning. In other words, mediative questioning would be in terms of how might you questions. What are some ways that we can? It's not you should do this or this is something we need to do. It's really sort of like leading a person to their own conclusion based on what they find the most important. Oftentimes what I might think would be the best solution is not always the best solution, because I'm only one person and I'm not in that classroom every single day like they are. So for me to ask those mediative questions and be open-ended, they're able to come to the conclusion. And a lot of times it works out perfect for them because they found their own solution. This also prevents the teachers and the staff from coming to you to always make the final call. I don't know if that's something that has been new to programming, but I've noticed that a lot of programming lately that I've been talking to other program managers, they have also employed mediative questioning, because it is a lot for a leader to make every single call every single day. And it does create, I think, some burnout if you feel like you always have to be the one to solve the problem. Because the best thing is to have other buy-in and teachers feel like they have that problem solving given back to them. Of course, we use data. That's extremely important when you're coaching. You need to use the data that you have, whether that's teacher evaluation data, it's student data, and that will help guide how you make those decisions or how the teacher comes to those decisions. Like I was talking about when we changed our scheduling, we had to look at the data to see why we needed afternoon classes, how this would best serve the students, and really dig into it before making those conclusions. And the teachers that decided on it really had the data to show that that's best for our programming. Positivity, very important when you're coaching. Never, like I said, positive intent, never come in thinking that somebody has an initiative that's not for the best of the students. I appreciate everything about the teachers in my program, the newer teachers to the veteran teachers who they might have a different one of the patterns of practice, but they always come in with a positive mindset and they have the students as a priority. Self-directing, part of coaching is guiding, not telling, making sure that you're there to help direct what the teacher's needs are. Teachers have different needs at different levels, and you need to make sure that you're guiding them based on what they need and what their students need, not what you think. Because again, as a leader, you're not always 100% aware of what will work best in one classroom versus another. So finally, I'm gonna wrap this up with one of the most effective things also is capacity and partnership. And I was showing you some pictures from the 5K that one of our lead teachers puts together. And I think that she does an excellent job of building the capacity in our program by partnering with other teachers, by partnering with the community. She's in that picture on the right. She's wearing the black shirt and the black pants. And she has really built up the capacity of the program, not because I came up with it or she came up with it. And it was something where she had priorities for her students. The priorities was to build community. That's one of the major things in her classroom. And what patterns does she put into place for that? Well, she makes sure that they have things to do throughout the year that are part of their community in the classroom. And that includes like history walking tours, canoeing excursions. They went maple sugaring a few weeks ago, cross-country skiing. So, and that's that partnership that she's built up with our park system. And it's just a really cool thing to watch. Another teacher, not me, not the administrator, but a teacher, really put into place all of those pieces that I've been talking about. I think the most important thing for me as a leader is for me to support that kind of capacity building that she has. I also have other amazing teachers that have many other initiatives, but I just wanted to highlight this one today because this one's a pretty cool one. Okay. Thanks for the hearts. I just saw those. Those are cute. I didn't know you could do that. That's great. Okay, so finally, I just wanted to, I love my little graphics. So when we have some of those things that I've been talking about, building those relationships, having the feedback between the teacher and the leader and back and forth, vice versa, and the collaboration piece, then you can really build up your capacity in your program, in the partnerships that you have within your community, and the students see it. So that's really something that I'm passionate about, is having those pieces in place. All right, so I'm gonna have you, so I'm gonna pause for questions in a minute, but first I'm gonna have you go back onto menti.com. Use your phone again, please. I'm gonna go to here, what strategies? So I just want to kind of find out from you guys, what strategies have you taken from today to be an open door leader? And the code I think is the same from what I can tell. Yes, it's 7589. 1294. Great. Always have positive intent. Great, thank you. Great, I love that idea, listening tour of all your departments. Awesome. Great. I'll try to go, I gotta go to the next, do I go to the next one? Oh, goodness, I went off. I didn't want to do that. I'll go back, sorry. Here, go back in. Okay, sorry about that. You know, the technical things. Okay. All right, I'll go back into that. Thank you, guys. These are great. Okay. All right, well, I'm gonna pause. I know I'm done a little bit early. I was telling James earlier, I try not to talk too fast, but sometimes it happens. If anybody has any questions, please feel free. Put them in the Q&A. And I'm gonna give you my information. And I'm gonna leave you with this quote. There are no questions. I love this quote, let us all be the leaders we wish we had. I think this is so true. When you go from teaching to leadership, or if you just came right into leadership, I think we all know we would like to be the leaders we wish we had. And then this is my email address, and I am on LinkedIn. If you want to connect with me, that would be great. And I'm more than happy to answer any questions after this. So. Okay, no open questions, no one, all right. I guess I answered them all.
Well, what a wonderful presentation. Thank you so much, Elizabeth.
Thanks.
Robert, you want to say a couple of closing words before we close it out?
I just wish Elizabeth had been there in 1990 when I started my adult education journey. That was wonderful in comparison to what our friends in K-12 have as far as leadership development and everything. We're obviously just a fraction, so you can never get enough of that. I know I'm going to recommend this webinar, which of course is a always ask questions. The fact that, thank you, James, and all of your team at COABE, that you archive all of these. And so you can, I always just Google COABE webinar archive and it pops right up. And so if anybody wasn't able to join in today, you can shoot them that link. And I think that was very powerful, Elizabeth, as a lot of states around the country that I visit are reevaluating their, not just their teacher preparation, but their leadership preparation, their administrator preparation. So
Right.
I'm going to recommend this one. I think it's a fantastic foundation for them to build on. So great job.
Thank you, I appreciate it. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, totally agree. Robert, thanks again to Burlington English for sponsoring today's webinar. As everybody can probably see, there's a one question poll that I would like you to answer if you could before you log off. And Robert already mentioned it, but the replay of this webinar will be posted to coabe.org, and all the participants will get their certificate of participation emailed directly to them. And
James, I have to put you on the spot.
yeah,
I hope you could do it in front of all the nation right here, but where are you going to be March 17th through 20th?
we are going to be in Nashville, Tennessee. I hope everybody on here is going to join us. Everything is, all of our numbers are through the roof. There is a ton of excitement. We have a ton of good partners and vendors. We have over 500 sessions lined up. We've got a lot of fun things happening at this conference. It's our 25th anniversary as well. So we're going to be celebrating that. So a lot of good things.
And we'll be there in force. So looking forward to seeing everyone there. And Elizabeth, fantastic job. And thanks to everyone who listens. Hope to see you on burlingtonenglish.com and the next webinar.
Okay,
Yes,
thank
thanks
you.
again, Robert. Thanks, Elizabeth, and thanks everybody
you.
for joining us today. Hope everybody has a great rest of the week, and we'll see you in Nashville. Thank you.
Bye,
Bye-bye.
thank you. Mm.